Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at Chronologue Mode, the capstone of the 4 types of timelines the Radial Timeline tracks: narrative, chronologue, author, and press. When you first open the Radial Timeline, you're looking at scenes in narrative order. This is the order they appear across the 3-act structure and how they will appear in the novel. But watch what happens when I switch to Chronologue Mode. By using the navigation or simply hitting 3, the entire timeline remaps to an adaptive time scale. This is enabled using a when, date, and time along with a duration in the declaratives at the top of the scene, known as front matter. You can use ongoing to signify that the scene skips through time, and it will be noted as potentially overlapping the next scene with an orange arc. Let's check out a few examples. First, we have my work-in-progress science fiction series. Chronologue Mode shows the start and end dates of the narrative, as well as the prologue and assorted flashbacks in the early days. In another example is my new test vault. Notice the time unit labels. We start at the top with the first date of the novel. The next scene lands 6 minutes later, so you only get the time. The following scene is a day later, so the display switches back to date and time. Same for the final scene, which anchors the story's end date. There's another thing I'd like to mention. Notice in our test vault, we have the first scene. That scene starts at 4 p.m. and it's 8 minutes long. Now the next scene starts at 4:06. It's 32 minutes long. So the arc duration is longer than the first scene's arc duration. However, the first scene is overlapping the following scene by 2 minutes. So we show this by making the arc orange. Now let's take a look at a classic of literature, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Here we have 8 subplots. First of all, we have Elizabeth and Darcy's main plot. Then we have the Jane Bingley secondary romance. Then we have Lydia's folly, charting her reckless descent, followed by Wickham's deception, which anchors the story's moral conflict. The Radial Timeline allows any scene to be part of multiple subplots. However, this introduces some complexity as to how you choose the subplot color for the outer ring all scenes. This is accommodated gracefully in several ways. First, when you hover a scene, you'll see that that scene's subplot is listed first of all the subplots that scene belongs to. Secondly, simply by clicking a scene to open, we set that scene's subplot color to be dominant in the outer ring. Let's focus on the Jane Bingley romance and use shift mode to confirm the passage of time between key events. First, we have Jane arriving at Netherfield after I walk in the rain and falling ill on October 10th. She convalesces 5 days before returning home. Bingley departs suddenly on November 29th. We see there's a 4-month gap before his return. Now let's zoom out and view the subplots after setting the dominance. The Jane Bingley romance goes dormant mid-novel, but resurfaces near the end. The main plot maintains presence throughout, and we also see Charlotte's pragmatism subplot wrap up early. Finally, by selecting the first and the last scenes, we see the fictional timeline Austen used as she guided her protagonist into the arms of her future husband. Now I'd like to mention that the subplot color dominance is indicated using a folded corner motif at the beginning of each subplot ring. If there is no corner, that subplot has no scenes that are in more than one subplot. If the folded corner has a color, that ring is fully expressed. A gray corner means that subplot is not fully expressed in the outer all scenes ring. Again, just remember to click on any scene in that subplot to fully express that subplot. With that said, let's take a look at some customizations you can make in settings. You can fine-tune the way the duration arcs are calculated and when the infinity time gaps appear in settings to suit your novel's timeline. Under Plugin Settings, Chronologue section, the Duration Arc dropdown displays your current durations for the scenes with the number of times it appears. We see a number of values that appear in the YAML for Pride and Prejudice, with 2 hours and a scene count of 19 being the most prevalent, and 3 days with 1 scene count being the longest. Let's change it to 4 hours. You can see the duration arcs quickly adjust to the new scale cap. Suppose you have too many tiny arcs in your manuscript due to a few long scenes. Ignore the skewing effect of the long scenes by picking a smaller time unit, thereby capping to the selected unit and proportionally scaling the rest. And below duration, we have the discontinuity infinity input field. Here, the calculation is 3 days for Pride and Prejudice, but that can be changed to fit your needs. Let's show any scene that has a gap of 1 day or more. Well, that's a lot of days. I better increase it to 2. That looks better. Use this to alert you to sections of the story that may need bridging scenes. Also, if you ever forget to enter your win date and time, the Radial Timeline will remind you. In Chronologue Mode, it will push the scene to the very beginning of the timeline, and it will also show the scene number square in red if the scene is in working or complete status. Also, in the scene synopsis, the missing date and time is reported in red, and using narrative mode, the date and time from the previous and following scenes are shown to provide helpful context. I think that brings us to the conclusion of another video. Radial Timeline's Chronologue Mode provides another compelling way for you to view your manuscript. It removes the narrative structure. No acts, no story beats, just the exact sequence events take place in time. With it, you can compose and orchestrate a complex timeline using the adaptive timeline, scene duration arcs, discontinuity gap detection, and elapsed time calculation between scenes. Please see my other videos about the features, functions, and philosophy of the Radial Timeline. Please leave a comment with your thoughts. And as always, keep your timeline radial and your story revolving.